This is Joe Libby, and I have to say I am very, very excited to be interviewing Dr. Mark Raizen. Mark is the chairman of the board of the Pointsman Foundation, and he'll be telling us a little more about that in a couple of minutes. And he's also professor of physics at the University of Texas at Austin. So, Mark, listen, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Joe, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
Absolutely, and I know that Mark, that you work with isotopes, and I was never very good at science, so for me and for other people who may not be sure, could you explain a little bit about what isotopes are?
Sure, I'm happy to. And in fact, often when I talk about isotopes, I get blank stares because it's been a while for some people. But isotopes are atoms in the periodic table, but atoms that are the same atom can have a different number of neutrons in the nucleus, but otherwise have nearly the same physical and chemical properties. And we call them different isotopes. So for example, carbon, most carbon is carbon 12 rather.
Okay.
But there's carbon 13 and carbon 14. Carbon 13 is a stable isotope of carbon. Carbon 14 is a radioactive isotope. Now, some isotopes occur naturally at various abundances that nature gives us, like carbon 12 and carbon 13, but others have to be produced artificially, and we call them radioisotopes because they are radioactive and decay. Now, some of those radioisotopes, like carbon 14, are generated in the atmosphere, or they're made by nature, but increasingly we can control and produce radioisotopes either in nuclear reactors or in cyclotrons. So we can activate and turn one element into another. In a way, this is like modern day alchemy.
Yeah.
We can convert one element into another element, but very often the new element is not stable and it will decay back.
Right.
But the work of another person, Ernest Lawrence, in the 30s and 40s, enabled the production of radioisotopes, not by accident, not by nature, but on purpose. He invented a machine called the cyclotron, which consists of high energy protons, and you could bombard elements with protons and convert them into isotopes. He also invented another machine, which is called the calutron, which was used to separate isotopes of the elements, because even separating them turns out to be very difficult because they're so similar in all respects.
I see.
So there's a premium, but because it's so hard to isolate, the cost is prohibitive. One gram of calcium-48 costs more than, I think, $150,000.
That's pretty good. And if you don't, I'm sorry, I apologize for interrupting, but I think you told me before, like, a gram is like basically about the same amount of sugar that's in a sugar packet. Isn't that what?
That's exactly right. That's 1 gram.
That small amount is worth $150,000.
That's right. Take your pick, sugar or sweet and low.
Right.
Either of them, yeah. That little packet can be worth over $100,000. If I quote the number in ounces, it's even more impressive. That's like $3 to $4 million an ounce.
Wow.
It's maybe more than 1,000 times the price, 2,000 times the price of gold.
Right, right. And what are some of the uses of isotopes?
So isotopes are used in medicine, and they're used in industry, in the oil and gas industry. I'll concentrate maybe on the use in medicine, which is what is of most interest to me.
Right.
So one example which is already used is carbon 13 is used to detect ulcers. And that's already in use. Radioactive isotopes are used in cancer therapy, but in a way we are on the verge of a new era in isotope therapy, partly because the reason this has not advanced as much as it could have is that until now, isotopes have been either too hard or too expensive to separate.
Okay.
That has held the field back. But now there are recent advances that will change that picture.
But can you tell us a little bit about those advances? I know that's a big part of your work.
Yes. So let me also say that the method that has been used for the most part, which was invented by Lawrence, is the calutron.
Right.
Calutron is used for most elements in the periodic table. Now, most people have heard of a centrifuge for separation.
Sure.
Centrifuge separation, though, is really used primarily for uranium enrichment. It's not used for anything else, hardly anything. So for the rest of the periodic table, we're stuck with a machine that is over 80 years old. And until now, there has not been a replacement. So that has been the problem. Now, in the past 10 years, roughly, my group has developed a new and highly efficient method to separate isotopes. We call that method magnetically activated and guided isotope separation, and that is a mouthful. So luckily, we have a nice acronym, and it's called MAGIS, M-A-G-I-S. MAGIS uses lasers to change the internal state of the atom.
Okay.
We can use a laser to make an atom behave differently in a magnetic field. We can control its magnetization, so it's either attracted or repelled by the magnetic field. Mm-hmm. And then we separate the atoms in a stream using permanent magnets.
And so MAGIS is, if I'm understanding, it's a much more efficient method than the calutron.
Yes, it is orders of magnitude more efficient energy-wise, and it can be used to enrich a wide range of atoms. We think most elements in the periodic table could be done this way. Now, physicists are fond of thought experiments. These are ideas that are proposed by scientists, and one never knows for sure if to take them seriously or not.
Right.
This thought experiment was proposed by one of the greatest scientists of all time, James Clerk Maxwell. Now, I'm often surprised that when I give public lectures that people have not heard of Maxwell, but everyone's heard of Einstein. But let me just say that Maxwell was Einstein's hero.
Okay.
That tells you something about how great a scientist was Maxwell. Literally, his greatest achievement was to unify electricity, magnetism, and light. But later in his life, towards the end of his life, Maxwell proposed an idea which became known as Maxwell's demon. Maxwell envisioned a creature, which was called the demon, every particle and direct its motion. In fact, by reading the biography of Maxwell, I was interested to see that he was inspired by a person who was responsible for directing the trains in the railways. That person was called the pointsman. That person was responsible for switching the tracks. So if a train was coming one way and the pointsman would switch the track to divert the train in the proper direction, otherwise he would not. So that was a very important role in the 19th century. Now it's done with computers.
Right.
Maxwell had the idea that suppose you had a creature that was like a miniature pointsman that could literally move individual particles, atoms, say, then that person, that creature would be able to do what we could not do and rearrange the particles in some useful manner. Maxwell envisioned, for example, isolating the hot atoms from the cold atoms. But it turns out that our method, MAGIS, is exactly Maxwell's demon, as he envisioned, applied to the separation problem of isotopes. Our atoms come in a mixed stream. They are all jumbled together, and then the laser beam that puts them in the appropriate magnetic state is like the pointsman. We call it an atomic pointsman because it operates on individual atoms. But I think Maxwell would actually be pleased to see his thought experiment come to reality and actually be useful.
Yeah, right. And all of this is actually happening now. This is reality now. It's not just a bunch of academic papers, right?
That's right. In fact, the timing is really good right now because we are just moving from the university research laboratory to a nonprofit entity that I started. I named it the Pointsman Foundation, which you can understand now for historical reasons. It refers to the thought experiment of James Clerk Maxwell. People can read about our work at the Pointsman Foundation at www.pointsman.org. We are now moving outside the university to make a private laboratory to produce medical isotopes.
So it's a really exciting time for you, undoubtedly.
It is. Yeah. It is. Yes, and we are just now. In fact, a few weeks ago, we rented a space, a private laboratory in Austin. We got an infusion of money to the foundation, and we are starting with our first medical isotopes. This one will be used for advanced cancer therapy, which is already certain types of therapy have already been approved for patients. And that's just our starting point. Eventually, we want to span many elements and many isotopes in the periodic table that will bring benefit and improve and save lives.
So this is really going to be revolutionary in the field of medicine and the field of treating disease.
I believe it will, because the time is right. We will make the isotopes available. And I think there will be also a confluence of other things happening at the same time, because there's, in parallel with our ability to provide the necessary isotopes, other people are developing much more effective targeting molecules. So you can inject a patient with a molecule that will find and attach to cancer cells in the body. Think about it as a seeking missile that will go and wherever they are, it will attach and bind to those cancer cells, whether it's a solid tumor or individual cells. And then the payload is the radioactive isotope that goes off like a little bomb and kills the cancer. This has been used, for example, for the case of alpha particles by one of my board members, who's an oncologist, professor of medicine at Columbia University. Mm-hmm. And he has used targeted molecules to treat stage 4 leukemia, and patients have gone into remission. But until now, the problem has been that the isotope has not been available, and we hope to change that. But there is hope now, I believe, for treating even advanced cases of cancer that up till now have been almost without any hope.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing, and wow, it's an exciting time to be sure. So,
and I should say that the goals of the Pointsman Foundation are not limited to isotopes. Generally, our mission is to develop advances in the physical sciences that benefit humanity. And isotopes are one thing. We're working on ideas for producing clean water and clean air and other things that are beneficial. So my hope is that the Pointsman Foundation can lead the path and maybe direct us to a better future.
That's fantastic. And once again, Mark, if people want to find out more about your work, more about the Pointsman Foundation, the website address is pointsman.org, correct?
That's right, www.pointsman.org.
And I'll be sure to include that in the comments in the show notes when I post that. There's also a Facebook page
yes,
that people can visit. So
absolutely, you can visit the Facebook page and like us on Facebook.
Great. Well, I think a lot of people are going to love you on Facebook. So this is. Fantastic.
I don't know if there's a love. Is there a love button on Facebook? I know there's a donate button, and that's an expression of love.
Right. And people can, if they so want to, they can donate to the.
Yes, we have donate button both on the Facebook page and on the website.
Fantastic.
And in fact, we have jump-started a lot of our activities through philanthropic donations. But in the long term, we intend to be self-sufficient. In fact, we will produce and sell the medical isotopes to pay for things that don't have a financial market. Sure.
Well, this is great, and I'm getting a little tongue-tied. I really am getting a little tongue-tied, even though, like I said, I don't understand much about science, but I think it's fascinating. I think it's exciting work, and I just wish you the best of luck with your continued research. Mark Raizen, thank you very much for spending a few minutes with us today.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.